What's up, friends? Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Pam, and today I'm going to show you a really cool recipe that I made out of the wild violets growing in my yard. So if you follow me on Instagram, which if you don't, that's totally fine, slightly hurtful, but it's fine. Here's my handle if you'd like to, correct that. Anyway, so if you were on my Instagram, you saw me making this beautiful violet syrup. And what this is basically just a simple syrup, the kind of thing that you would put in cocktails or stuff like that. But this is made out of the wild violets in my yard. One of many weeds that I love so much and cannot believe people do not want growing at their homes. So if you're wondering what a wild violet syrup tastes like, the closest thing it reminds me of is chamomile. It's got that slightly floral taste and it's very good. So you're not gonna be choking down anything that isn't pleasant to actually consume. So I'm gonna tell you a little bit about the violets that I have in my yard. You will probably have one of these variations. There are actually 550 species of viola, that we know of right now. So there are a plethora of violas for you to come across either in your yard or if you're foraging out in the woods or whatever. But you do want to look up the plants that you are picking because you want to A, make sure that they are actually a viola, and B, that they are not the yellow violets that they tend to grow in higher altitudes, so they'll probably be a little less common for a lot of us. But you just don't want to eat those. Some people say it's okay, some don't. If anybody is saying not to, I'm just gonna go with them. But that's not an issue for me. All I have in my yard are the common blue violet and its hybrid cousin with an incredibly stupid common name, the Confederate violet. They named it that because it was the same shade of gray blue as those traders that lost that war back then, that one. Anyway, stupid common names aside, of which there are many, these are both varieties of the Viola sororia. I think I'm saying that right. I'll put it on the screen for you. And these two wild violets are not quite the same as the one in Europe, which is more common in their medicinal practices. And that's actually the sweet violet, and that will have a really nice smell to it. You'll probably notice the ones in your yard may have either a faint smell, which I've found is the case with the Confederate violet, and lesser so with the dog violets or the marsh violets or the common blue violet. So why would you want to consume violets in the first place? Now, the leaves and the flowers are both edible and both have medicinal properties, both topically and taken internally. Violets are an antioxidant. They have anti-inflammatory properties. Topically, you can apply them for eczema, skin irritation, bug bites, things like that. They're also supposed to be really good for hemorrhoids. They're also good for draining swollen lymph nodes. They're considered a blood cleanser. I don't really know what that means, to be honest with you. It sounds a little wacky, so I'm not too sure on that one. And most importantly for yours truly, they are used for treatments of dry coughs. Anything bronchial, lung related. A general tip for herbalism that I have heard echoed pretty much across all of the people that I get information from is that you should really try to focus on anywhere from like 1 to 5 different plants at a time, and you want to make sure that you really get to know those plants before you move on and collect all these things and consume all of these herbs and plants that you're not totally sure how you may react to them. And if you combine them together without having any experience with the individual herbs or ingredients, you may have a reaction and not really know what caused it. So for me, I have been experimenting with Tulsi for the last year. I feel very comfortable with that. I know I react well to that. I know I really enjoy it. So that's something I feel like I can continue to learn about, but also like move on to some newer things. So I've been focusing on, I don't know what kind of bird that is. I'm sorry, I will fill the feeders in a minute. I have 900 more needy animals now. I actually completely forgot what I was just talking about. All right, fuck it. Let's just talk about how to make the syrup. So what do you need to make your violet syrup? So I talked about I have 2 different kinds of violets in my yard. There's a lot of those white violets, aka the Confederate violet. I'm not gonna call it that anymore. We're gonna refer to it as the white violets. So I have a lot of those in my yard, far more than the purple violets, which is interesting because the purple ones are actually far more common than what I have. I have noticed that the white violets have more of a scent than the purple ones, so they will transmit a little bit more of that flavor into the syrup. than the purple ones might, but the purple ones are the ones with the color, and that's what you want for this particular experiment, because we are going to do something fun where you change the color of your syrup from a blue into a purple, or in my case, I went a little hard on the lemon juice and it turned a little more pink. Now, I went through a few trials of this, just trying to make sure that I had it right so that when I made this video, it would be as helpful to you guys as possible. And what I noticed was that I really needed to up the amount of the purple violets that I put into the mix. I had a lot more white violets than the purple ones, and I was kind of hoping that I could get by with that. But as you will see, I took some footage of the first, experiment with this. It really just came out more of a brown color. And that was for two reasons. One was because I had far too many of the white violets, and the other was because I used a natural, unbleached kind of sugar. And unfortunately, while I prefer to use that over the processed white sugar, if you want the color for this, particular experiment, you're probably going to want to use the white sugar. And you know what? You use so little of this to sweeten anything that it'll be fine. So your first step is to gather your violets. Now, violets, unlike things like dandelions, are actually not a huge food source for pollinators. They do have some visitors, including bees, but for the most part, they're not the preferred food of a lot of important insects. Not that they're all important, but you know what I mean. So you don't have to feel too bad about harvesting them. I have sort of a guiding principle with harvesting anything that's not, say vegetables that I grew in my garden for myself. When you're harvesting something that is in the wild or that insects use, usually I will take one for every 3 that I see. So I'll take 1 and I'll leave 2 behind. And that's just so I know I'm not depleting anything, I'm not taking food away from any insects, and I'm not making it so that the plant is unable to, revive itself. So on that note, another cool thing about these wild violets is that they have these subterranean flowers that never actually see the light of day. They never open, but they set seed, which is another way that the violet propagates itself in the absence of having all these pollinators and all this outside assistance for propagation. They have these cool subterranean flowers, which I just think is so wild. I don't want to steal anybody's picture without asking, but if you do a quick Google search, you'll be able to see it. Violet leaves are actually a pretty important food for some caterpillars, so that's something to keep in mind if you are harvesting violet leaves, which also have a whole bunch of uses. And I'm probably gonna make another video about that because I'm in the process of making a tincture with the flowers and the leaves right now. So when you go out to harvest your violets, you're going to want to only pop off the flower. You don't want to have a whole lot of stem or a lot of green bits attached to it, because that will mess with the color of your syrup, and it can also somewhat affect the flavor, but it's mostly the color that you're concerned about. I found a good proportion to do your first little experiment with this would be to have a mason jar, like one of those 4-cup mason jars, and you're gonna collect about 2 cups, about half that mason jar full of blossoms, and you wanna have them packed down a little bit, so not just fluffy in there. You wanna really get a lot of blossoms in there. Beyond that 2 lightly packed cups of violets, I didn't really notice that it made much of a difference. It was much easier to control the color, and just an overall easier process to do it with less. So you can pick more if you want. You can double this recipe if you want, but I kind of had a rough time with that. So just stick with the 2 cups of packed violets for your first attempt at this. And before you get this whole process started, you're probably going to want to wash off your flowers. Don't worry about this. I was very stressed about it. I didn't know if it was going to damage the flowers or affect the process at all, but it really didn't. I just soaked my violets in some cool water and I rinsed them out, and then I soaked them in water again, and you can use like a salad spinner or something like that to dry them off. But since we're just adding more water to them anyway, if you're making your syrup right away, it's really not that big of a deal. And if you're unable to make your syrup right away, you can pick the violets, put them in a mason jar, screw the lid on, and just put them in the fridge. Don't wash them yet or anything like that. Just put the dry flowers in the fridge, and they'll keep that way for a good day or so if you need to, put off the rest of the process until then. And then what you're gonna do is you're gonna boil a cup of water. You want to add in a little bit more than a cup, obviously, just to make sure you have a full cup, but then you're going to measure out a full cup of that boiled water, and you're going to let it sit for a few minutes. You don't want to pour the super hot boiling water onto those violets because you're gonna dull the color, and like I've been saying, we want to maintain as much of that blue color as possible. So once you've got your not quite boiling but quite hot water on your violets, you can screw on the top of your mason jar and just put it aside and leave it there for anywhere from like 12 to 24 hours. I think I left it a little bit more than 24 hours, but generally you want to keep it to about 24 hours. And you'll notice once that 24-hour period has passed, your water should be a really deep blue color, almost like an indigo. Okay, so now comes the part where we're gonna strain all of those flowers out of our liquid, and we're gonna put that liquid into a pan. You're gonna bring your violet infusion water to a warm temperature. You're not gonna wanna boil it or anything like that. Again, we're trying to preserve those colors, and you're gonna dissolve in 2 cups of sugar. And like I said, you want to use the white sugar if you don't want to mess with the color too much. And I'm quite sure you can use other sugars for this. I'm not really sure though, and I haven't done it personally, so I don't want to say definitively one way or another. But if someone has experimented with other kinds of sugars that are white in color, like maybe a coconut sugar or something, let us know down below if it works for simple syrup. Now the trick with simple syrup is you want to dissolve all of the sugar until the liquid is completely transparent without burning the liquid. So it can be a little tricky. I think that that may have been another factor as to why I lost some of my color in that first experiment. So this time around I was a little nervous. So I wanted to take the sugar water off of the stove before it was completely dissolved, and I wanted to show you guys the really cool trick of changing the color with lemon juice. So this syrup will change to green if you add, I think it's like an alkaline, and then it will change to a more pink if you add an acid. So like we're using citrus in this case. So the syrup's not totally done yet, so just bear with me for a second. I'm doing things a little out of order. But I just wanted to show you guys how cool this was, and I was running out of time to babysit the syrup on the stove. So this is how you change the color. You're just gonna squeeze a little bit of lemon into it. I actually squeezed a little bit too much to make it more of a pink color than a purple. I would have done just a hair less if I had been paying attention. So you want to go slow on the lemon juice to get it just the right color that you want. How cool is that though? It's so pretty. So I wanted to take the rest of my syrup and warm it in a safer, more controlled way. So what I did was I brought it over to this little disc. I actually have my teapot set on it right now. I don't want to burn my hands, so I'm going to show you. So I just set the rest of my simple syrup on that warmer, and I set it to the higher setting, and I think within 10 minutes it was completely clear. It looked like this, and it was absolutely perfect. It took me 2 tries to get this totally right, but I'm glad that it did, because this gave me a little bit of experience to be able to tell you guys, you know, what could possibly go wrong and how you can fix it. So what can you use this on? So I've been using this, like I said, to sweeten floral teas. You can use it to moisten cakes. You can use it to make some delicious botanical cocktails or mocktails if you don't drink. So you can use it in seltzer water. It makes like a really nice, refreshing little light drink. And I'm sure there's a million more ways you can use this. That's just what I've gotten through so far. And it's just really fun, and it makes a really cool gift. And you know, you're using what is already outside, probably in your yard if you have an unkempt, messy lawn like me. Some other fun things you can do with violas: you can press them in books. You can make beautiful pressed flower art, which I'm also working on right now. You can make a tincture out of it, which you can use 100 proof vodka, and that's 50% water and 50% alcohol, so that will actually activate both the water soluble properties in the viola and the leaves, as well as the ones that are drawn out by the alcohol. So I will probably make a video as I go through that process as well, and so I can show you guys that too. So you've got about a 1.5 month window of these guys flowering, so get out there, pick some violas, eat them, put them on your salad, freeze them into ice cubes. There's a million really fun things you can do with it. Just give it a Google on the internet. And yeah, let me know how you make out. I hope you guys enjoyed this. It's so good to see you again. I promise the break, it wasn't even a break, it was more of a paralysis. It's just life just kicking me in the teeth. I'm feeling a lot better now, so I'm getting my creativity back. I feel like I say that a lot, but you know, I'm doing my best here, man. Thank you so much for watching my videos. Extra special thanks to my wonderful patrons who have been supporting me through this lull in content. I appreciate you guys. I'm gonna eventually put a little screen with all your names on it here. So yeah, I'll see you guys next time. Eat your Wheaties.